The scent of ancient blood, thick with untold power, clung to the air of the Alpha King's desolate halls. For centuries, prophecies foretold a mate of unparalleled might, a she-wolf whose lineage could ignite dormant magic and solidify the throne against the creeping shadow of the fading sickness. Yet King Roric, hardened by countless battles and the weight of his crown, had spurned every formidable contender. His wolf, a primeval beast of obsidian fur and burning amber eyes, yearned not for the overtly powerful, but for a whispers of the moon's secret, an unacknowledged soul hidden away in a gilded cage, whose true potential remained a sleeping titan. Moonstone Manor, a monolith of shadowed grey stone and ancient magic, stood as both Elara's sanctuary and her prison. Within its labyrinthine corridors, where the scent of aged parchment and forgotten power mingled with the earthy aroma of hidden gardens, her life unfolded with the quiet predictability of the lunar cycle. She was a breath of summer air in its sombre depths, her frame slender, adorned in the muted, serviceable gowns decreed by her guardian, Elder Maeve. Her hair, the colour of twilight's first whisper, often escaped its simple braid, framing a face whose gentle features belied an inner landscape of unuttered longings. At 19, Elara possessed an ethereal grace, a soft beauty often unnoticed, overshadowed by the more boisterous displays of strength prized within their rigid shifter society. She was merely Elara, the orphaned ward, a distant cousin to a minor pack lineage, deemed unworthy of a strong wolf spirit. The ancient laws, codified in scrolls older than the manor itself, dictated that power begat power, and Elara's perceived lack of it relegated her to the periphery of their grand tapestry, a forgotten thread. This perceived dormancy was both her greatest burden and her most profound secret. She knew the whispers, a weakling, a human heart trapped in a wolf's bloodline, a failed shift. Each barbed word was a link in the invisible chain that bound her, keeping her from embracing any grander destiny. Her days were spent among the manor's dusty tomes, tracing the faded scripts of forgotten lore, or tending the moon-petal garden that thrived under the manor's ancient enchantment. This routine, while confining, offered a veneer of purpose, distracting from the gnawing emptiness that often gripped her. The manor, with its whispering draughts and creaking timbers, was more than just a home. It was a living entity, its stones imbued with the essence of generations of powerful shifters, their energies a low hum beneath her bare feet. Sometimes, a phantom coldness would brush her skin, or a fleeting melody echo in the silence, hints of the manor's deeper magic, a magic that seemed to respond only to her, a phenomenon she dared not voice. The Moonstone Manor was rumoured to have been built upon a ley line, a convergence of raw primal energy, its very foundation humming with an almost sentient awareness. Elara felt this hum, a subtle vibration that resonated deep within her bones, a constant reminder of unseen forces. She had often caught glimpses of ethereal lights dancing in her periphery, or heard ancient tongues spoken in the rustling of leaves, moments that made her question her sanity or the true nature of her dormant state. Could her bloodline, deemed minor, actually hold a key to something far greater, something the elders had long sought to suppress or had simply forgotten? Tonight, the air thrummed with a different kind of tension, a heavy anticipation that pressed against her chest, like the iron bands of an ancient scroll. Alpha Roric of the Shadowclaw pack was due to arrive. His visit was not one of diplomacy or friendship, but a formal inspection, a prelude to the arranged mating contract whispered about for months. Elara was to be his mate, a union orchestrated by Elder Maeve and Roric's alpha father, a political maneuver to solidify alliances and blend minor bloodlines. Roric, a colossal brute whose wolf was said to manifest with obsidian fur and teeth like ancient daggers, represented everything Elara feared: raw, unthinking power, coupled with an arrogance that chafed against her quiet spirit. He was rumoured to despise any mate not forged in the fires of a dominant lineage, viewing them as mere vessels for his heirs, an extension of his formidable ego. The thought of his touch, the overwhelming presence of his wolf, made her skin crawl with chilling dread. The scent of a male's wolf was meant to evoke longing, connection, a recognition of soulkin. For Elara, the imagined scent of Roric's dominance was a bitter tonic, promising only subjugation. She knew the history of their people, where mate bonds, though sacred, were often political chess pieces, especially for those in power. She would be merely a pawn, her destiny sacrificed for the greater good of an alliance she had no say in. She often wondered if there was a different path, a destiny not etched in the cold stone of patriarchal tradition. Her romantic hopes were a fragile, secret thing, nurtured in the pages of forbidden poems, dreams of a mate who would see beyond her meek facade, who would recognize the latent embers of strength she felt stir within her. Sometimes with a surprising warmth, she longed for a bond based on understanding, on shared whispers under the moon, not a forceful claim. But in their world such hopes were luxuries, quickly extinguished by the pragmatic demands of pack and bloodline, by the ancient code that prioritized progeny and power above all else. The mate bond, revered as sacred and unbreakable, was often, for those of her station, a contractual obligation, a means to an end. It was the brutal reality of their existence, the sharp edge contrasting with the delicate dreams she held close. She yearned for freedom, for the ability to chart her own course, a yearning that often felt like rebellion within the confines of her disciplined life. This internal conflict, the clash between what was expected and what she truly desired, was a constant battle fought silently within her heart. It was the humanity battling the wolf, or perhaps the hidden wolf battling the perceived one. A sudden gust of wind, laden with the sharp scent of pine, the metallic tang of an approaching dominant wolf, and an unsettling undercurrent of raw ambition swept through the open casement window of her small tower room. It was Roric. Elara's breath hitched, a silent gasp caught in her throat. Her senses, usually subtle, heightened acutely, almost painfully so. She could almost taste the power radiating from him, a cloying, suffocating aura that felt like a heavy chain around her heart, tightening with each beat. Her wolf, if she truly possessed one, remained conspicuously silent, a dormant entity refusing to stir, unlike the eager thrumming she heard from the manor's resident she-wolves, their instincts vibrating with the undeniable presence of a powerful male. She often questioned her own nature. Was she merely human, a flaw in a powerful lineage, or something else entirely? The ancient text spoke of moon-kissed individuals, those whose shifting abilities were delayed, evolving only when true love or dire peril awakened their slumbering beasts. But such tales were dismissed as old wives' fables now, relegated to myth by pragmatic, power-hungry leaders. Yet, a part of her, a deep, knowing core, clung to those myths, a secret hope against the tide of logic. She descended the winding grand staircase, its polished wood gleaming faintly in the evening light, each step a descent into a future she dreaded. The main hall of Moonstone Manor was a testament to its heritage. Tapestries depicting ancient hunts and moonlit ceremonies adorned the walls, their threads imbued with faint magic that made the scenes seem to ripple with life, whispers of forgotten glories echoing in the cavernous space. A massive fireplace carved with snarling wolf heads dominated one end, its unlit hearth a cold moor tonight, mirroring the chill in Elara's spirit. Elder Maeve, a formidable woman whose silver hair was pulled into a severe bun, stood by the entrance, her scent a sharp mix of age, authority, and weary resignation. Beside her was Alpha Roric, already a looming figure even in the dim light, his presence a palpable weight in the ancient room. His eyes, the color of flint, swept over Elara with a dismissive glance that pricked her skin like tiny shards of silver. He barely acknowledged her presence, his focus clearly on Elder Maeve and the political implications of their meeting, his wolf impatient for the formalities to conclude. His scent, now closer, was undeniably potent, male, dominant, and laced with an undertone of stale ambition, a hunger for more power that left a bitter aftertaste. His pack, the Shadowclaws, were known for their relentless pursuit of dominion, and Roric embodied their ethos perfectly. Their history was etched in blood and conquest, a stark contrast to the quiet, introspective magic of the Moonstone line. Elara, Elder Maeve's voice was as crisp as autumn leaves, devoid of warmth, a command rather than an invitation. Present yourself to Alpha Roric. Elara curtsied, her gaze fixed on the polished floorboards, avoiding Roric's imperious stare. She felt acutely aware of her humble attire, the plain fabric a stark contrast to the richness of Roric's dark, tailored leather, and the heavy silver amulet depicting a howling wolf that rested against his muscular chest, a symbol of his unchallenged might. He was every inch the powerful Alpha, his confidence a palpable force that seemed to absorb all other energies in the room, suffocating any glimmer of individuality. "Elder," Roric's voice was a low growl, deep and commanding, cutting through the silence like a sharpened blade. "She seems fragile. Are you certain she will be a suitable vessel for the Shadow Claw line? The king's decree demands strong alliances, not ornaments." His words, though directed at Maeve, sliced through Elara like a shard of ice, highlighting her greatest insecurity, the very core of her fear. He was judging her, dismissing her, already seeing her as a weakness, a decorative but ultimately useless accessory. A tremor of resentment, hot and unexpected, ran through her, a small spark of defiance in the face of his blatant disregard. It was a faint echo of the powerful wolf she was supposed to be, a flicker of outrage from a spirit not yet broken. Elder Maeve stiffened, her scent briefly turning tart, a flash of defensiveness. Her bloodline, while dormant, holds ancient significance, Alpha. A slow burn, perhaps, but potent once awakened. The Moonstone line has always been known for its resilience and its unique connection to ancient magic, and she is biddable, which I understand your previous challenges have lacked. The implication of Roric's contentious past with powerful she-wolves, ones who dared to challenge his authority, was not lost on Elara. It was a clear warning, a chilling reminder of the fate that awaited those who defied the dictates of their powerful mates. The pack lore was filled with tales of she-wolves broken by dominant males, their spirits dimmed, their power suppressed. Elara feared that exact fate. Elara lifted her gaze, meeting Roric's eyes for a fleeting second. She saw disdain, yes, but also a flicker of something else, a predatory calculation that sent a shiver down her spine, a cold premonition. He didn't see her, Elara, a soul with dreams and fears. He saw a resource, a means to an end, a blank canvas upon which to paint his legacy. It was brutal and deeply humiliating, reducing her to an object. Yet she felt a subtle resistance within her, a faint thrumming in her veins like a distant echo of a forgotten song, a melody of ancient strength. It wasn't her wolf, she knew that, but something deeper, older, something that stirred beneath the surface, refusing to be entirely quelled. It was a defiance born of compassion, a refusal to be utterly consumed, a whisper of the female paranormal power waiting to manifest. Later, confined once more to her small chamber, the silence of the manor felt oppressive, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the incessant tick-tock of the grandfather clock downstairs, each second measured, bringing her closer to her predetermined fate. The air still carried the phantom scent of Roric's oppressive power, an unpleasant lingering reminder of her impending future. She ran a hand over the smooth, cold surface of the antique silver mirror gifted to her by her long-dead mother. Its frame was intricately carved with crescent moons and stylized wolves, symbols of the Moonstone lineage, but the silver itself seemed to pulse faintly under her touch, a sensation she had experienced often since childhood, but never understood. It was as if the metal, usually anathema to shifters, a burning poison, was somehow drawn to her, embracing her instead of rejecting her. It defied all known rules of their world, a blatant contradiction to werewolf lore. She traced the faint scar above her wrist, a childhood injury from a fall in the manor's forgotten west wing, where a crumbling fresco depicted a lone she-wolf bathed in moonlight, surrounded by an unfamiliar symbol, a coiled serpent intertwined with a crescent moon, an emblem she recognized from the most ancient forbidden texts as the mark of the Moon Seers, a lineage whispered to possess abilities far beyond mere shifting. She remembered the strange feeling that day, a sudden surge of heat, then a chilling cold followed by an inexplicable clarity, a fleeting glimpse of something vast and ancient, a world of shifting realities and profound arcane knowledge. She had dismissed it as childish imagination, a trauma-induced hallucination. But tonight the memory lingered, sharp and insistent, coupled with a deep, unsettling intuition. The silver mirror seemed to hum, a low resonant vibration, and the scar on her wrist pulsed, a faint, almost imperceptible glow beneath her skin, a soft inner luminescence that defied explanation. It was a whisper of power, a latent energy stirring, refusing to remain dormant, reaching out. Her future with Roric felt like a golden cage being locked around her, beautiful and suffocating, trapping her breath, extinguishing her identity. Yet in that silent hum, in that faint light, a defiant thought bloomed, a fragile seed of free will against the crushing weight of destiny. She was not merely a vessel, not merely a pawn. She was a secret, waiting to unfold, a dormant force. The true nature of her bloodline, tied not just to wolves but to the very essence of the moon's ancient magic, to the wisdom of the Moon Seers, remained hidden, a dangerous, beautiful truth biding its time for its grand revelation. A storm was brewing, both within her and without, threatening to shatter the fragile peace of Moonstone Manor, to tear down the gilded walls of her prison. The moon outside, a sliver of silver, seemed to watch, patient and knowing, an ancient eye upon her burgeoning fate, a silent promise of transformation. The binding ceremony was to be held in the grand hall of the Crescent Court, the ancient seat of the Alpha King's power. The hall itself was a monument to werewolf supremacy, vaulted ceilings carved with the phases of the moon, pillars of black obsidian that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and floors of polished marble inlaid with silver runes that pulsed faintly with protective magic. Elara stood in the preparation chamber, her reflection fragmented in the triptych of mirrors before her. The ceremonial gown they'd dressed her in was exquisite, midnight blue silk that pooled at her feet, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that mimicked wolf tracks circling her body. A collar of moonstone sat heavy against her throat, each stone cold as winter's first frost. "You look like a proper Alpha's mate," Elder Maeve said, adjusting the collar with practiced efficiency, but her eyes held something else, a flicker of concern, quickly masked. "Remember, child, silence is your armor tonight." Before Elara could respond, the doors burst open. Roric strode in, magnificent in his ceremonial leathers, his alpha aura rolling off him in waves that made the lesser wolves in the room bare their throats instinctively. His eyes raked over Elara with the same detachment one might appraise livestock. "Acceptable," he said curtly. "The Alpha King has arrived. We begin in 10 minutes." He left without waiting for acknowledgement, and Elara felt something cold settle in her chest, not fear but a growing numbness that felt like drowning in slow motion. The Grand Hall was packed with representatives from every major pack in the Northern Territories. Elara recognized the banners: Shadowclaw, Iron Ridge, Blood Moon, Silverpine. The air was thick with competing scents: dominance, ambition, barely concealed hostility. This wasn't just a binding ceremony. It was political theater. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a dais of black stone, sat the Alpha King. Elara had never seen him before, though his legend preceded him like a storm. Kael Nightborn, the youngest Alpha King in 3 centuries, who'd unified the fractured packs through a combination of brutal efficiency and uncanny strategic brilliance. They said he could track a lie through a crowded room, that his wolf was larger than any in living memory, that he'd never taken a mate because no she-wolf had ever held his interest for more than a night. He was younger than she'd imagined, perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes the color of winter steel. He wore his power like a second skin, casual and absolute. His gaze swept the room with the bored efficiency of a predator who knew he had no equals. When his eyes passed over her, Elara felt something electric crack through the air, a sensation like lightning seeking ground. For a heartbeat, his gaze locked with hers, and she saw something flicker in those cold depths. Surprise? Recognition? Then it was gone, and he looked away as if she were nothing. The ceremony began with the traditional recitations. An elder from the Shadowclaw pack spoke of lineage and duty, of the sacred bonds that strengthened pack unity. Elara stood beside Roric at the center of the hall, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes upon her, judging, measuring, finding her wanting. Roric's hand closed around her wrist, not gently. His claws pricked her skin, drawing tiny beads of blood. "Smile," he hissed under his breath. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "Perhaps I am," she whispered back, and felt his grip tighten painfully. The elder called for the blood oath, the moment when their blood would mingle, creating a bond that was difficult, though not impossible, to break. A silver blade was presented on a velvet cushion, its edge gleaming with runes of binding. Roric took the blade first, slicing his palm with practiced ease. His blood welled dark and rich, dripping onto the white marble floor where the silver runes began to glow brighter, responding to alpha blood. He extended the blade to Elara. She took it, the silver handle cold against her skin. Strange, it should have burned. Silver always burned werewolves, even dormant ones, but she felt only cold. She pressed the blade to her palm and drew it across. The world exploded. Her blood hit the marble, and the silver runes didn't just glow, they ignited. blazing with white-hot light that flooded the entire hall. Elara gasped as power surged through her veins, ancient and vast, like a dam breaking after centuries of pressure. The moonstone collar at her throat shattered, fragments scattering across the floor like fallen stars. The mark on her shoulder blade, the one she'd always hidden, erupted with searing heat. She felt her skin split, not with pain, but with release, as luminous silver lines spread across her back, forming patterns she'd seen only in the oldest texts, the mark of the Moon Seers. "Impossible," someone breathed. Roric stumbled backward, his face contorted with shock, and something darker, fear. "You said she was dormant. You said—" "I am dormant," Elara whispered, but even she could hear the lie in it now. The power coursing through her was anything but dormant. It was awake, and it was furious at having been caged for so long. The Alpha King rose from his throne, his movement sharp with sudden interest. His eyes were locked on her, no longer bored, no longer dismissive. He looked at her like she was a puzzle he'd just realized was worth solving. "Moon Seer," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "There hasn't been a Moon Seer bloodline active in 200 years. They were hunted to extinction after the Purge." "Clearly not extinction," Elder Maeve said quietly from the shadows. "Merely dormancy." Roric's shock was transforming into rage. "You knew," he snarled at Maeve. "You knew what she was and you hid it. Do you have any idea what you've done? Moon Seers are forbidden. Their bloodline is cursed." "Their bloodline is powerful," the Alpha King corrected, descending from the dais with predatory grace, "which is why your ancestors feared them enough to slaughter them." He stopped before Elara, close enough that she could smell him, pine and winter wind and something wild that made her wolf, dormant for so long, stir with interest. His eyes searched her face, and she felt stripped bare under that gaze, every secret laid open. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elara Moon Whisper," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Moon Whisper." He smiled, and it was a dangerous thing. "Of course I should have known. Your grandmother was Liana Moon Whisper, wasn't she? The last Moon Seer to stand before the council before they ordered her execution." Elara's breath caught. "You knew her." "I was a child, but yes, I remember her. She told my father that his reign would end in blood and betrayal." His smile sharpened. She was right. He was assassinated 3 years later by his own beta. Roric had recovered enough to find his voice. "This changes nothing. The binding ceremony will continue. Her bloodline doesn't alter our agreement." "The ceremony is over," the Alpha King said, his tone brooking no argument. "You cannot bind a Moon Seer without her explicit consent, given freely and without coercion. It's ancient law written in the first accords. Surely you remember your history, Roric?" Roric's face flushed dark with humiliation and rage. "You're interfering in Shadowclaw business." "I'm enforcing the law." Kael's voice dropped to something lethal. "Unless you'd like to challenge me on it." The hall went deathly silent. Everyone knew what that meant. A challenge to the Alpha King was a challenge to the death. Roric's jaw worked, fury and calculation warring in his eyes. Finally he spat at Elara's feet. "Keep her then, I don't want damaged goods anyway. A bloodline of traitors and madwomen." He turned to leave, but not before delivering his final blow. He looked at Elara with such contempt that it felt physical. "Did you really think I wanted you? You were a political convenience, nothing more. A dormant wolf with no prospects, grateful for any attention. I've had she-wolves in my bed worth 10 of you." Laughter rippled through parts of the crowd. Cruel, mocking. Elara felt her face burn with humiliation, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, judging, pitying, enjoying her degradation. But beneath the humiliation, something else was rising. The power that had awakened wasn't retreating. It was growing, fed by her anger, her shame, her years of being told she was nothing. The silver runes on the floor began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Elara," Elder Maeve warned, "control it." But Elara didn't want to control it. For the first time in her life, she wanted to let go. The Alpha King's hand closed around her wrist, not painfully, but firmly. His touch was warm, grounding. "Not here," he said quietly, for her ears only. "Not like this. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you lose control." His words cut through the red haze. Elara dragged in a shaking breath, then another, forcing the power back down. The runes dimmed. The pressure in the air eased. Kael released her wrist and turned to address the assembly. "The binding ceremony is dissolved. Elara Moonwhisper is under the protection of the Crown until her status can be properly determined. Anyone who challenges this answers to me personally." He offered Elara his arm, a gesture of unmistakable respect that sent shocked murmurs through the crowd. "Come, we have much to discuss." Elara looked at his offered arm, then at the faces surrounding her. Roric's hatred, the crowd's fascination, Elder Maeve's worried approval. She took the Alpha King's arm. As they walked from the grand hall, Elara felt the weight of her old life falling away like chains. She didn't know what came next, but she knew with absolute certainty that she would never be caged again. Behind them, the silver runes on the marble floor continued to glow softly, spelling out words in the old tongue that only a few could read. The hidden one rises. The moon has chosen. The Alpha King's private quarters occupied the highest tower of the Crescent Court, a deliberate choice, Elara suspected, that allowed him to look down upon his domain while remaining removed from it. The chambers were surprisingly austere for a king. Dark wood furniture, walls lined with ancient texts and maps, a massive window that overlooked the sprawling territory below. The only concession to luxury was a fireplace carved from black marble, flames dancing within it despite the summer heat. Kael released her arm once the heavy doors closed behind them, immediately moving to pour 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He offered her one without preamble. "Whiskey," he said. "You look like you need it." Elara took the glass with trembling hands, the events of the past hour crashing over her now that she was away from the crowd's scrutiny. She drank, the liquid burning a path down her throat, grounding her. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally. Kael settled into a chair near the fire, studying her with those unsettling winter steel eyes. "Because Roric is an arrogant fool who doesn't deserve a Moon Seer's power in his bloodline. Because ancient law protects you, and I don't break laws I've sworn to uphold." He paused, swirling his whiskey. "And because when your blood hit those runes, I felt something I haven't felt in a very long time." "What?" "Interest." The word hung between them, weighted with implications Elara wasn't ready to examine. She moved to the window, needing distance, needing air. Below, the Crescent Court sprawled like a small city. Training grounds, council halls, residential quarters for visiting pack representatives. In the distance, she could see the dark line of the Shadowwood Forest, ancient and forbidding. "Elder Maeve knew," Elara said quietly. "She knew what I was all along. She kept me hidden, kept me dormant somehow. Suppression magic," Kael confirmed. "Old, powerful, and extremely dangerous. The fact that you survived it speaks to the strength of your bloodline. Most Moon Seers would have died or gone mad. Why would she do that? To protect you." A new voice, gentle but firm, came from the doorway. Elder Maeve entered, looking older than Elara had ever seen her, the weight of secrets finally visible. "May I?" Kael gestured permission, and Maeve moved to stand before Elara, her weathered hands reaching for the younger woman's face. "Your mother made me promise, child. Before the Shadowclaw Pack hunters found her, before they—" She swallowed hard. "She begged me to hide you, to suppress your gift until you were strong enough to survive what comes with it." "What comes with it?" Elara demanded, anger and confusion warring in her chest. "Visions," Maeve said simply. "Moon Seers don't just have power, they see. Past, present, future, all tangled together like threads in a tapestry. Your grandmother went mad from it. Your mother learned to control it, but it made her a target. Every pack wanted to use her gift for their own advantage. When she refused, they killed her," Elara finished, the truth she'd always suspected finally confirmed. "They tried to kill you too. You were only 5 years old but already showing signs of the gift. I took you to Moonstone Manor, placed you under suppression, told everyone you were dormant. It was the only way to keep you safe." Elara felt tears burning her eyes but refused to let them fall. "You stole my childhood, my identity, everything I could have been." "I kept you alive," Maeve interrupted, steel in her voice now. "And now that your power has awakened, you need to learn to control it before it consumes you. Moon Seer magic isn't like normal werewolf abilities. It's older, wilder, connected to forces that don't care about your survival." Kael rose from his chair, moving with that predatory grace that marked him as Alpha. "She's right. You need training, and you need it from someone who understands ancient magic." He looked at Maeve. "Can you teach her?" "I can teach her the basics, shielding, grounding, how to manage the visions when they come. But for true mastery," Maeve hesitated, There's only one person I know who might have the knowledge. Who? Elara asked. Theron Ashwood. He lives in the Shadowwood, has for decades. He's a witch, one of the old blood from before the Pacts and the Covens went to war. He studied with the Moon Seers before the Purge. Kael's expression darkened. Ashwood is dangerous, unpredictable. So is untrained Moon Seer power, Maeve countered. The girl needs a mentor who understands what she's dealing with, unless you'd prefer she accidentally tears a hole in reality the next time she loses control. The casual mention of reality tearing made Elara's stomach drop. That's possible. Your grandmother did it once, Maeve said grimly. Opened a rift to the Shadow Realm during a vision. It took 3 covens and 5 Alpha Packs working together to close it. 17 wolves and 6 witches died in the process. Silence fell, heavy with the weight of that revelation. Elara sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. So what now? I go live in the woods with a dangerous witch and hope he doesn't kill me while teaching me not to destroy reality? You stay here, Kael said firmly, under my protection. Ashwood can come to the court, or we'll arrange supervised visits to his territory, but you don't leave my sight until we know you're stable. Something in his tone made Elara look up sharply. Why do you care? You don't know me. Kael met her gaze, and for a moment she saw past the Alpha King's mask to something raw beneath. Because I've spent 10 years being paraded in front of every eligible she-wolf in the Northern Territories, Alphas offering their daughters, Betas offering their sisters, all of them beautiful, powerful, perfectly trained to be a queen. His voice dropped, and not one of them ever made me feel anything. Not interest, not desire, not even basic curiosity. He moved closer, and Elara found herself unable to look away. Then you walked into that hall tonight, hidden and underestimated, and when your power awakened, it was like lightning striking. For the first time in a decade, I felt something. What? Elara whispered. Recognition. He smiled, and it transformed his face from coldly handsome to devastating. My wolf recognized yours, even though yours is still sleeping. That doesn't happen by accident, Elara. Before she could process that, a sharp knock interrupted them. A young wolf entered, bowing quickly. Alpha King, there's a situation. Roric is demanding an audience. He's brought half the Shadowclaw pack with him, and they're armed. Kael's expression went cold and lethal. How predictable. He can't challenge me directly, so he'll try intimidation. He looked at Elara. Stay here. Maeve, ward the room. No one enters except me. Wait, Elara said, standing. If this is about me, you should stay hidden while I remind Roric why challenging the Alpha King is a fatal mistake. Kael's voice was pure command now, the weight of his alpha aura filling the room. This isn't negotiable. He left before she could argue, the door closing with finality. Maeve immediately began tracing runes in the air, silver light following her fingers as protective wards snapped into place around the chamber. He's right to be cautious, Maeve said. Roric won't accept this humiliation quietly. He'll try to reclaim you or destroy you. Either outcome restores his pride. Elara moved back to the window, watching as figures gathered in the courtyard below. Even from this height, she could see the tension, the way wolves circled each other with barely restrained aggression. Roric stood at the center, his posture radiating fury. Then Kael emerged, alone, and the entire courtyard went still. Elara couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. The Alpha King's body language said everything. Casual, unconcerned, utterly dominant. When Roric stepped forward, clearly shouting something, Kael simply smiled. Then he shifted. Elara had never seen a wolf so large. Kael's wolf form was massive, easily twice the size of Roric's, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb light. His eyes glowed silver white, ancient and terrible. The shift had taken less than a heartbeat. No pain, no struggle, just pure transformation. Roric shifted too. His brown wolf impressive by normal standards, but dwarfed by the Alpha King. For a moment, Elara thought there would be a fight. Instead, Kael simply looked at Roric. Just looked. And Roric's wolf dropped to the ground, belly exposed, whining in submission. The entire Shadowclaw contingent followed suit, unable to resist the sheer dominance radiating from their king. It was over in seconds, a display of power so absolute that violence wasn't even necessary. Kael shifted back, still smiling that dangerous smile, and said something that made Roric's human form, when he shifted back, go pale with rage and humiliation. Goddess, Elara breathed. He didn't even have to fight. That's what makes him Alpha King, Maeve said quietly. True power doesn't need to prove itself, it simply is. When Kael returned an hour later, he looked satisfied. Roric has withdrawn his claim and returned to Shadowclaw territory. He won't trouble you again. I made sure the consequences of trying were very clear. What did you say to him? Elara asked. That if he came near you again, I'd declare blood feud against his entire pack and hunt them to extinction. Kael poured himself another whiskey. He believed me. Would you really? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. You're under my protection now, Elara. That's not a political statement. It's a promise. Anyone who harms you answers to me. The intensity in his voice made something warm unfurl in Elara's chest. Not just gratitude, but something deeper, dangerous. I've arranged for quarters in the East Wing, Kael continued. You'll have privacy, but guards outside your door at all times, not to keep you prisoner, he added quickly, seeing her expression, to keep threats out. Tomorrow we'll contact Ashwood and begin your training. And tonight? Tonight you rest. You've had enough trauma for one day. He moved toward the door, then paused. Elara, what you did in that hall, awakening your power, standing before the entire court, that took courage. Don't let Roric's words make you doubt your worth. After he left, Elara stood alone in the firelight, her reflection ghostly in the dark window. Her shoulder blade still tingled where the Moon Seer mark had appeared, silver lines visible even through her gown. For the first time in her life, she wasn't dormant, wasn't hidden, wasn't safe. And, despite everything, she felt more alive than she ever had. 3 weeks had passed since the disastrous binding ceremony, and Elara barely recognized herself. She stood in the training courtyard of the Crescent Court, sweat dampening her simple tunic, her hands glowing with silver light as she practiced the shielding techniques Theron Ashwood had drilled into her. The witch had arrived 5 days after Kael's summons. A tall, angular man with copper hair streaked with silver and eyes that seemed to see through time itself. Again, Theron commanded, his voice sharp as broken glass. And this time, don't just push the magic out, guide it. Moon Seer power responds to intention, not force. Elara closed her eyes, reaching for the well of power that no longer terrified her quite so much. She visualized a shield, silver and translucent, forming around her body. The magic responded, flowing through her veins like liquid moonlight, coalescing into a shimmering barrier. Better, Theron acknowledged. Now hold it while I attack. He raised his hand, and a bolt of green witch fire shot toward her. Elara's shield held for 3 seconds before shattering, the backlash sending her stumbling backward. Strong hands caught her before she fell. Kael's scent, pine and winter wind, enveloped her as he steadied her. Easy. You're pushing too hard. I need to be stronger, Elara insisted, frustrated. The visions are getting worse. Last night I saw... She stopped, unwilling to speak of the blood and fire that had haunted her dreams. Kael's expression darkened. He'd been present for most of her training sessions, watching with an intensity that made her hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. What did you see? War, she said quietly. Packs turning on each other. The Crescent Court burning. Possible futures, Theron interjected, approaching with his characteristic lack of concern for personal space. Moon Seers don't see fate. They see probability. Every choice creates new branches, new outcomes. What you saw is one potential path. A path we need to prevent, Kael said grimly, which is why she needs to master this faster. Mastery takes time, Alpha King. Push her too hard and she'll burn out, or worse, fracture. Theron's gaze was knowing. Though I suspect your concern isn't purely strategic. The air between Kael and Theron crackled with tension. The witch smiled, amused. Interesting. The unmated Alpha King finally finds someone who stirs his wolf, and she's the one creature in the realm he can't simply claim through dominance. Theron, Kael's voice dropped to a warning growl. I'm simply observing. Theron turned back to Elara. We're done for today. Rest. Tomorrow we begin vision walking, teaching you to enter the visions consciously rather than being dragged into them. After Theron left, Kael remained, his presence both comforting and unsettling. Over the past weeks, Elara had discovered layers to the Alpha King that contradicted his fearsome reputation. He was patient with her questions about pack politics, surprisingly well-read in ancient history, and possessed a dry humor that caught her off guard. And the way he looked at her, like she was a mystery he was determined to solve, made her feel things she'd never experienced with Roric. Walk with me, Kael said, offering his arm. They strolled through the court's gardens, a rare oasis of green in the stone fortress. Other wolves gave them wide berth, though Elara felt their curious stares. The Alpha King walking with the Moon Seer had become a common sight, and speculation ran rampant. "There's an event tonight," Kael said. "The Autumn Equinox Gala. Representatives from every major pack will attend, along with several coven leaders. It's political theater, but necessary. You want me to attend?" It wasn't a question. "I want you to make your formal debut, not as a dormant wolf being offered for breeding, but as Elara Moonwhisper, Moon Seer under the crown's protection." He stopped, turning to face her. "I want them to see what you've become." "What have I become?" Elara asked, genuinely uncertain. Kael's hand rose to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "Powerful, dangerous, magnificent." His voice dropped. "Mine." The possessive word sent heat spiraling through her. "I'm not property to be claimed." "No," he agreed. "You're not, which is why I'm asking, not commanding. Will you stand beside me tonight? Let the realm see that the Hidden One has emerged." Elara thought of Roric's contempt, of years spent believing she was worthless. Then she thought of the power humming beneath her skin, of the visions that showed her possible futures, of the way Kael looked at her like she was the only wolf in existence. "Yes," she said, "I'll stand with you." The Autumn Equinox Gala transformed the grand hall into something from a fever dream. Thousands of candles floated overhead, their flames shifting through colors: gold, silver, crimson, green. The obsidian pillars were wrapped in vines that bloomed with night flowers, their perfume intoxicating. Tables laden with food lined the walls, and in the center, wolves and witches mingled in an uneasy truce, maintained only by the Alpha King's authority. Elara descended the grand staircase on Kael's arm, acutely aware of every eye turning toward her. She wore a gown that Elder Maeve had commissioned, midnight black silk that seemed to absorb light, with silver embroidery that matched the Moon Seer marks, now permanently visible on her shoulder blades. Her hair, usually bound, fell in dark waves down her back. At her throat, instead of the shattered moonstone collar, she wore a simple silver chain bearing a crescent moon pendant, a gift from Kael. The whispers started immediately. "That's her, the Moon Seer. I heard she nearly killed Roric during the binding ceremony. The Alpha King hasn't left her side in weeks. Do you think she's his mate?" Kael's hand tightened fractionally on her arm. Reassurance, not restraint. "Ignore them. You belong here." They reached the floor, and immediately wolves began approaching, alphas wanting to curry favor, betas offering alliances, she-wolves sizing up potential competition. Kael handled each interaction with practiced efficiency, but Elara noticed how he positioned himself, always between her and potential threats, his body language screaming possession even as his words remained diplomatically neutral. Then she saw him, Roric, standing near the far wall with a stunning she-wolf at his side. The woman was everything Elara wasn't: tall, voluptuous, with golden hair and amber eyes that marked her as high-born. She wore Shadowclaw colors and clung to Roric's arm with proprietary confidence. Roric's eyes met Elara's across the room, and his expression twisted with malicious satisfaction. He whispered something to the she-wolf, who laughed, a sound designed to carry. "He brought Sarah Goldenmane," a voice said beside Elara. She turned to find a young woman with kind eyes and auburn hair. "I'm Lissa, beta of the Silverpine Pack. And before you ask, yes, everyone's noticed, and yes, he's doing it deliberately." "Doing what?" "Trying to make you jealous. Sarah's been his on-and-off lover for years. Bringing her here, flaunting her. It's meant to hurt you." Lissa's expression was sympathetic. "For what it's worth, everyone knows you dodged an arrow when that binding fell through." Before Elara could respond, Kael returned, his expression thunderous. "Roric's here. I saw. I can have him removed." "No." Elara straightened her spine, drawing on the power that now felt like a second skin. "I won't run from him, not anymore." Kael studied her for a long moment, then smiled, proud and fierce. "Then let's remind him what he lost." He led her to the center of the hall, where wolves were beginning to dance, a traditional courtship dance that involved complex patterns and close contact. Kael pulled Elara into his arms, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. "Follow my lead," he murmured, and then they were moving. Elara had never danced like this, had never been taught, had never been considered worth the effort, but Kael guided her effortlessly, his body leading hers through turns and dips that felt less like dancing and more like flying. The other wolves cleared space, watching as the Alpha King and the Moon Seer moved together with a synchronicity that spoke of deeper connection. Kael pulled her close, their bodies aligned, and Elara felt the heat of him, the barely restrained power. "You're trembling," he observed. "I've never done this before." "I know." His hand splayed across her lower back, possessive and protective. "But you're doing beautifully. Look at me, Elara." "Only me." She did, and the rest of the hall faded away. There was only Kael's winter steel eyes, the strength of his arms, the way he looked at her like she was precious beyond measure. The dance ended, but Kael didn't release her. Instead, he raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. The gesture was unmistakably possessive, a public claim that had the entire hall buzzing. "Alpha King." Roric's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He approached with Serra still clinging to him, his expression a mask of false civility. "How domestic. Playing nursemaid to damaged goods suits you." Kael's aura flared, a wave of dominance so powerful that several lesser wolves dropped to their knees. "Careful, Roric. My patience with you is already thin. I'm simply making conversation." Roric's smile was poisonous. "Though I am curious, have you told her yet? About the Moon Seer accords?" Elara felt Kael tense beside her. "That's not—" "What accords?" she demanded. Roric's smile widened. "Oh, he didn't tell you? The ancient laws that protect Moon Seers also bind them. Any Moon Seer who reaches full power must serve the Alpha King as advisor and seer. Essentially, you're his property by law. How romantic." The words hit like a physical blow. Elara turned to Kael, searching his face. "Is that true?" "It's more complicated than, is it true?" she repeated, her voice sharp. Kael's jaw tightened. "Yes, the accords state that Moon Seers serve the crown, but I would never force—" "You knew." Elara stepped back, betrayal burning in her chest. "All this time, the protection, the training, She couldn't finish, couldn't voice the growing feelings she'd been developing. "You knew I'd be bound to you eventually." "Elara, listen to me." "No." Silver light began to pulse beneath her skin, her power responding to her emotional turmoil. "You're just like him. Just like all of them. You saw something you wanted and you took it, dressed it up as protection and choice, but it was always a cage." "That's not true," Kael said, his voice raw with something that might have been pain. "What I feel for you has nothing to do with the accords." "What you feel?" Elara laughed bitterly. "You feel ownership, possession, the same thing Roric felt, just wrapped in prettier words." The silver light was growing brighter, her marks blazing. Around them, wolves backed away, sensing danger. Theron appeared at the edge of the crowd, his expression alarmed. "Elara, you need to calm down," the witch called. "Your power is spiking." But Elara was beyond calm. Weeks of suppressed emotion, humiliation, anger, betrayal came flooding out, and her power came with it. The candles overhead exploded in showers of wax. The night flowers withered and died. The very air seemed to crack, reality thinning. "Elara, please." Kael reached for her. She threw up her hand, and a wall of silver light slammed into him, sending the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the realm, stumbling backward. The hall went deathly silent. Elara looked at her hand, shocked by what she'd done. Then she looked at Kael, at the hurt and frustration in his eyes, and felt something break inside her. "I need air," she whispered, and fled. She ran through the corridors of the Crescent Court, her power crackling around her like lightning, until she reached the highest tower, Kael's private quarters, where she'd first found refuge. She burst onto the balcony, gasping for breath, tears finally falling. Below, the court continued its celebration, oblivious to the girl falling apart above them. "He's not wrong, you know." Elara spun to find Lissa standing in the doorway, her expression gentle. "How did you—" "I followed you. Figured you might need a friend." Lissa moved to stand beside her at the railing. "And before you push me away too, hear me out. Yes, the accords exist. Yes, technically you're bound to serve the crown, but Elara, I've known Kael for 5 years. I've seen him with dozens of she-wolves, all of them trying to catch his interest. He's never looked at any of them the way he looks at you. He wants to own me. He wants to protect you. There's a difference." Lysa's voice was firm. "The accords give him legal authority over you, yes, but he's never once invoked them. He asks your permission, respects your choices, trains you to be stronger. That's not ownership. That's partnership. Then why didn't he tell me? Because he's a fool. Lissa smiled sadly. A powerful, ancient, incredibly intelligent fool who's terrified that if you knew about the Accords, you'd never trust that his feelings are real. Elara wiped at her tears, her power finally calming. What if they're not? What if it's just the bond, the recognition he talked about? Then you'll figure it out. But Elara, don't let Roric's poison ruin something that could be real. He wanted you to react exactly like this. He wanted to drive a wedge between you and the one person who actually sees your worth. Before Elara could respond, Kael appeared in the doorway. He looked haggard, his carefully maintained control visibly fraying. Lissa, give us a moment. The beta squeezed Elara's hand and left. Kael approached slowly like she was a wild animal that might bolt. I should have told you, he said quietly. About the Accords. I was going to, but He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I was afraid. Afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now, like I'm just another male trying to cage you. Aren't you? No. The word was fierce, absolute. Elara, I've had power my entire life. I've had wolves bow to me, fear me, obey me without question, and it's empty, all of it, until you walked into that hall and your power awakened, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt something real. He moved closer, his eyes burning with intensity. Yes, the Accords bind you to the crown, but I don't want you because of ancient laws. I want you because you're brilliant and brave and powerful, because you challenge me, because when I'm with you, I'm not just the Alpha King, I'm Kael, and that's enough. Elara's breath caught. Kael, I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that what I feel is real, that I see you, Elara Moon Whisper. Not the Moon Seer, not the political asset. You, the sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability in his eyes. It was everything Roric had never been. Elara felt her walls cracking, her heart opening despite her fear. One chance, she whispered, but no more secrets, no more hidden laws or political machinations. If we do this, we do it honestly. Kael's smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Deal. He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Elara took it. Below them the gala continued, but up here in the moonlight, something new was beginning, something that felt dangerously like hope. The weeks following the autumn equinox gala brought a shift in the Crescent Court's atmosphere, subtle but unmistakable. Elara was no longer the hidden curiosity, the Moon Seer under protection. She was becoming something else entirely, a force in her own right. Her training with Theron intensified. She could now enter visions consciously, walking through possible futures like corridors in a vast mansion. She'd learned to shield not just herself but others, to sense lies through the disturbances they created in the magical field around her, to channel her power into focused strikes rather than explosive outbursts. But more than her magical growth, it was her presence that had changed. She walked the court's halls with her head high, her Moon Seer marks visible and unashamed. Wolves who once dismissed her now stepped aside with respect or fear. She'd earned both. And through it all, Kael was there. True to his word, he'd hidden nothing else from her. He'd shown her the complete text of the Moon Seer Accords, explained every political implication, even offered to petition the council to have them amended. But Elara had surprised him, and herself, by refusing. The Accords protect Moon Seers as much as they bind us, she'd said, studying the ancient text. Without them, I'd be hunted by every pack wanting to exploit my gift. This way I'm untouchable except by you, and you, she'd met his eyes. You've proven I can trust you. The look on his face had been worth every moment of doubt. Now, standing in Kael's private study, Elara watched as he reviewed reports from the border territories. He'd invited her to these strategy sessions, valuing her insights, both mundane and visionary. It was a partnership, genuine and equal, that she'd never imagined possible. The Blood Moon Pack is moving troops toward Iron Ridge territory, Kael said, pointing to marks on the map spread across his desk. Alpha Varin claims it's routine patrol rotation, but the numbers don't support that. Elara moved closer, studying the map. Then she placed her hand on it, letting her power flow. Silver light traced across the parchment, highlighting areas of future conflict. There, she said, pointing to a mountain pass. In 3 weeks, if nothing changes, they'll attack here. Varin wants the iron mines. His pack's weapons are inferior and he knows winter is coming. Kael's expression was grim. Can we prevent it? Yes. If you move Silverpine reinforcements to the pass now, Varen will see he's outmatched and back down. He's ambitious, not suicidal. Elara's vision cleared and she swayed slightly. The future sight still drained her. Kael's arm was around her waist immediately, steadying her. Easy. You're pushing too hard again. I'm fine, she protested but didn't pull away. His touch had become familiar, comforting, something she craved more than she wanted to admit. You're exhausted. Kael guided her to the leather couch near the fireplace, settling beside her. When's the last time you rested? Actually rested, not just collapsed from magical depletion? Elara couldn't remember. Between training, vision walking, and attending council sessions, sleep had become an afterthought. There's too much to do. There's always too much to do. That's the nature of power. Kael's hand found hers, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. But you're no good to anyone if you burn out. Trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way. What happened? He was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. 5 years ago there was a rebellion. 3 packs united against my rule, claiming I was too young, too ruthless, that I'd seized power illegitimately. His voice was distant, remembering. I fought for 6 months straight. Battles, negotiations, political maneuvering. I barely slept, barely ate. I was determined to prove I deserved the crown. What changed? I collapsed during a council session, fell unconscious for 3 days. When I woke, my beta, a wolf named Marcus, my closest friend, told me that I'd nearly died, that my body had simply given out. Kael's jaw tightened. He said that a dead king couldn't protect anyone, and if I wanted to actually lead, I needed to learn the difference between strength and self-destruction. Wise advice. It was. Marcus died 2 years later, killed by a rival pack during a peace negotiation. The pain in Kael's voice was raw, unguarded. I've never forgiven myself for sending him instead of going myself. I was too busy, too important, too... He stopped, swallowing hard. Elara squeezed his hand, understanding flooding through her. That's why you're so protective, why you won't let me push too hard. I won't lose someone else I care about to my own ambition. Kael turned to face her, his winter steel eyes intense. And I do care about you, Elara, more than is probably wise for an Alpha King. Her heart stuttered. They'd been dancing around this for weeks, the growing attraction, the careful touches, the way they gravitated toward each other. But neither had spoken it aloud. Kael... A sharp knock interrupted them. Lissa entered, her expression urgent. Alpha King, we have a situation. Roric is here, and he's brought someone with him, a witch from the Thornwood Coven. They're demanding an audience, citing ancient right of challenge. Kael was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from vulnerable to lethal. What kind of challenge? They wouldn't say. Only that it concerns Elara and the legitimacy of her Moon Seer claim. Ice flooded Elara's veins. They're going to try to prove I'm a fraud. Let them try, Kael growled. Assemble the council. If Roric wants a public spectacle, I'll give him one he won't forget. The council chamber was circular with tiered seating that allowed all present to see the center floor where challenges were traditionally held. Representatives from every major pack filled the seats, alphas, betas, elders, along with several coven leaders, whose presence indicated the seriousness of the situation. Elara stood beside Kael on the raised platform, reserved for the Alpha King, acutely aware of every eye upon her. Across the chamber, Roric stood with a woman Elara didn't recognize, tall and severe, with iron-grey hair and eyes like chips of obsidian. Her power was palpable, ancient and cold. State your challenge, Kael commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. The witch stepped forward, her movements precise and deliberate. I am Morgana Thornwood, High Priestess of the Thornwood Coven. I come bearing a formal challenge to the claim that Elara Moonwhisper is a true Moon Seer of the ancient bloodline. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Kael's expression remained impassive, but Elara felt his fury through the subtle tension in his body. On what grounds? Moon Seers possess 3 distinct abilities that mark their bloodline: future sight, truth sensing, and reality weaving. While Miss Moonwhisper has demonstrated the first 2, she has never proven the third, the ability to alter reality itself through will and power. Morgana's smile was cold. Without all 3, she is merely a talented seer, not a true Moon Seer, and therefore not subject to the Accord's protection. The implication was clear. If Elara wasn't a true Moon Seer, she wasn't under the Crown's protection. She'd be vulnerable to any pack that wanted to claim her or eliminate her. Reality weaving is the rarest and most dangerous of Moon Seer abilities. Theron's voice rang out from the assembly. The witch had positioned himself strategically, ready to defend his student. It typically manifests only under extreme duress or after years of mastery. To demand it as proof is unreasonable. Is it? Morgana countered. The ancient texts are clear. All three abilities must be present for the bloodline to be considered true. If Miss Moonwhisper cannot demonstrate reality weaving, then her claim and her protection is invalid. Roric stepped forward, his expression triumphant. I propose a test, a controlled environment where Miss Moonwhisper can attempt to demonstrate this ability. If she succeeds, her claim stands. If she fails, he smiled. Then she's free to be claimed by any pack, as is traditional for unclaimed she-wolves with valuable gifts. The trap was elegant and vicious. Refuse the test, and Elara's legitimacy would always be questioned. Accept it, and she'd have to perform an ability she'd never successfully manifested under pressure, with her entire future hanging in the balance. This is absurd, Kael said, his alpha aura flaring. I won't allow— I accept, Elara interrupted, her voice clear and steady. Every head turned toward her. Kael's expression was shocked, almost betrayed. Elara, no. If my claim is going to be questioned every time someone wants to challenge the Crown's authority, then let's settle it now. She stepped forward, meeting Morgana's cold gaze. What's your test? Morgana's smile widened. Simple. Reality weaving at its core is the ability to impose your will upon the fabric of existence. You must take something that is, and make it something that isn't, or vice versa. I will create a construct, a magical impossibility. You must make it real. And if I succeed, then your claim is validated before the entire council, and no one may question it again. Morgana's eyes glittered. But if you fail, you forfeit the Crown's protection and submit to pack law regarding unclaimed she-wolves. The chamber erupted in argument. Some voices supported the challenge, others condemned it as a political maneuver. Through it all, Elara felt Kael's gaze boring into her, felt his desperate desire to protect her warring with his respect for her autonomy. She turned to him, speaking quietly enough that only he could hear. I have to do this. You know I do. You could die, he said, his voice raw. Reality weaving gone wrong doesn't just fail, it tears the caster apart. I've read the histories, Elara. I've seen what happens when Moon Seers attempt it before they're ready. Then trust that I am ready. She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. Trust me, Kael. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. I do. But if this goes wrong, if she's rigged this test somehow, then you'll have my permission to declare blood feud against everyone involved. Elara smiled, trying for confidence she didn't entirely feel. But it won't come to that. Kael raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent. The challenge is accepted. Morgana Thornwood will create her construct. Elara Moonwhisper will attempt to make it real. The council will bear witness. Morgana moved to the center of the chamber floor, and Elara followed. The witch began to chant in the old tongue, her hands weaving patterns in the air. Dark energy coalesced, forming into a shape that made Elara's breath catch. It was a rose, but impossible. Its petals were made of crystallized shadow, its stem of solidified moonlight, its thorns of frozen flame. It existed and didn't exist simultaneously, a paradox that hurt to look at. Make it real, Morgana commanded. Give it true substance, true form, or admit you cannot. Elara approached the impossible rose, her mind racing. She'd never attempted reality weaving consciously, but she'd done it accidentally, the night of the binding ceremony, when her power had awakened and altered the very runes on the floor. She'd imposed her will on reality without knowing it. She could do it again. She had to. Elara closed her eyes, reaching deep into the well of her power. But this time she didn't just draw on magic. She drew on memory. She thought of every moment she'd been told she was nothing, every time she'd been dismissed and underestimated. She thought of Roric's contempt, of years spent believing she was dormant and worthless. Then she thought of who she'd become, the power she'd claimed, the respect she'd earned, the love she was beginning to believe she deserved. She opened her eyes and they blazed silver white. You want me to make the impossible real? She said, her voice resonating with power. Reality is just consensus, Morgana, a shared agreement about what can and cannot be. But I'm a Moon Seer. I don't accept your consensus. She placed her hands around the impossible rose and her power flooded into it. Not forcing, not pushing, guiding as Theron had taught her. She felt the paradox at the rose's core, the contradiction that kept it from being truly real, and she simply decided it wasn't a contradiction anymore. The rose shuddered. Its shadow petals gained weight and texture, becoming dark velvet. Its moonlight stem solidified into silver, warm and real. Its flame thorns cooled into ruby crystal, beautiful and sharp. When Elara stepped back, the rose remained. No longer impossible, no longer a construct. Real, solid, existing. The chamber exploded with noise, shock, awe, fear. Morgana stared at the rose, her expression for the first time showing something other than cold confidence. "Impossible," she breathed. "No," Elara said, picking up the rose. "Just improbable. There's a difference." She walked back to Kael, who looked at her like she'd hung the moon itself. She offered him the rose, and he took it with hands that trembled slightly. "Your claim is validated," he announced, his voice ringing with pride and something deeper. "Elara Moonwhisper is a true Moon Seer of the ancient bloodline. Let no one question it again." The council erupted in affirmation, some enthusiastic, some reluctant, but all acknowledging the truth they'd witnessed. Roric's face was a mask of impotent rage. Morgana simply inclined her head, accepting defeat with cold grace. "The Thornwood Coven acknowledges the claim," she said, and swept from the chamber. Later, in the privacy of Kael's quarters, Elara finally allowed herself to collapse. The reality weaving had drained her more than she'd let anyone see, and now exhaustion crashed over her in waves. Kael caught her, lifting her effortlessly and carrying her to the couch. "You're insane," he said, but his voice was full of admiration. "Brilliant and brave and completely insane." "I learned from the best," Elara murmured, her head resting against his chest. "Elara." Kael's hand cupped her face, tilting it up so she met his eyes. "What you did today, you didn't just prove your claim. You proved that you're stronger than any of them imagined, stronger than I imagined." "I had good motivation," she admitted. "I wasn't going to let Roric take anything else from me. Not my power, not my future, not—" She stopped, suddenly shy. "Not what?" Kael prompted, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Not you," she whispered. "I wasn't going to let him take you from me." Kael's expression transformed. Wonder and desire and something that looked dangerously like love. "Elara Moonwhisper," he said softly. "You are the most extraordinary creature I've ever known. And if you'll have me, not as your Alpha King, but as Kael, just Kael, I'm yours." "I'll have you," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was everything. Gentle and fierce, patient and desperate, a claiming and a surrender all at once. Elara felt her power rise to meet his, silver light and alpha dominance intertwining, creating something new, something that felt like destiny. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I've probably loved you since the moment you shattered those moonstone chains, and your power lit up the Grand Hall. But I know it for certain now." Tears pricked Elara's eyes, happy tears for once. "I love you too, even though you're arrogant and overprotective and entirely too used to getting your way." "I'll work on that," he promised, grinning. "Don't work too hard," she said, pulling him down for another kiss. "I kind of like you this way." Outside, the moon rose full and bright over the crescent court, blessing the Moon Seer and her Alpha King. And in the shadows, Roric watched and plotted, his hatred burning brighter than ever. 6 months had passed since the council challenge, and the crescent court had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. Elara stood on the balcony of what were now her shared quarters with Kael, watching the sun rise over the northern territories. The view never failed to take her breath away, rolling forests giving way to distant mountains, their peaks still crowned with snow, even as spring warmed the valleys below. Somewhere out there, packs went about their lives, unaware that the Moon Seer, who'd once been considered dormant and worthless, now helped guide the realm's future. Strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind, and Kael's chin rested on her shoulder. "You're up early," he murmured, his voice still rough with sleep. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." Elara leaned back into his warmth, marveling at how natural this had become. The casual intimacy, the comfortable silence, the sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. The spring equinox ceremony, Kael guessed, among other things. Today marked not just the seasonal celebration, but Elara's formal investiture as Royal Seer, a position that hadn't existed in 2 centuries, recreated specifically for her. It meant official recognition, a seat on the council, and authority that extended beyond just advising the Alpha King. It meant she'd truly found her place. "Nervous?" Kael asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if I'm not ready? What if—" "Elara." He turned her to face him, his winter steel eyes warm with affection and absolute certainty. "You've prevented 2 wars, identified 3 assassination plots, and last month you reality-wove an entire bridge across the Shadowwood Gorge when the old one collapsed. You're more than ready." She smiled despite her nerves. "When did you become such an optimist?" "When I fell in love with a woman who makes the impossible real on a regular basis." He kissed her properly then, slow and deep, and Elara felt her anxiety melt away. This, them, was real. Everything else would follow. The spring equinox ceremony was held outdoors, in the ancient grove that predated even the Crescent Court. Massive oak trees formed a natural cathedral, their branches intertwining overhead to create patterns of light and shadow. At the grove's heart stood a stone altar carved with runes so old that even Theron couldn't translate all of them. Hundreds had gathered, not just wolves, but witches, fey representatives, even a delegation of vampires from the southern territories. Elara's rise had implications beyond pack politics. It signaled a return to the old ways, when different supernatural races worked together rather than in isolated hostility. Elara wore ceremonial robes of midnight blue and silver, her Moon Seer marks visible and proud on her bare shoulders. At her throat hung a new pendant, a crescent moon intertwined with a wolf, symbolizing her bond with Kael. They hadn't formally mated yet. Both wanted to be certain the choice was made freely, without political pressure or magical compulsion, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. Kael stood at the altar in his formal regalia, every inch the Alpha King. Beside him stood the council elders, Theron representing the magical community, and Lissa as witness for the packs. The Beta had become one of Elara's closest friends, a sister in all but blood. As Elara approached the altar, she caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd. Elder Maeve, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, pride radiating from every line of her body. Members of the Silverpine Pack who'd become allies and friends. Even some Shadowclaw wolves, those who'd broken from Roric's leadership after his repeated failures. Roric himself was notably absent. After the council challenge, he'd retreated to Shadowclaw territory and hadn't been seen at court since. Rumors suggested his pack was fracturing, his authority questioned by wolves tired of his obsessive vendetta. Elara had seen possible futures where he attempted one final strike against her, but in every vision, he failed. His power was broken. He simply hadn't accepted it yet. The ceremony began with traditional invocations to the moon goddess, to the ancient spirits of the forest, to the magic that bound all supernatural creatures. Then Kael spoke, his voice carrying through the grove with alpha authority. 2 centuries ago, the Moon Seers were hunted to near extinction, their gifts feared and their wisdom silenced. Today, we correct that injustice. Today, we welcome back what was lost. He extended his hand to Elara. "Elara Moon Whisper, step forward." Elara climbed the altar steps, her heart pounding but her steps steady. She'd walked through fire, literal and metaphorical, to reach this moment. She wouldn't falter now. Kael took her hands, and she felt the familiar spark of connection, the way their powers recognized and complemented each other. "Do you, Elara Moon Whisper, accept the responsibility of Royal Seer, to guide this realm with wisdom, to speak truth, even when it's unwelcome, to use your gifts in service of peace and justice?" "I do," Elara said clearly. Theron stepped forward, carrying a circlet of silver worked into the shape of intertwining moons and stars. "This crown was worn by the last Royal Seer, Liana Moon Whisper, your grandmother. It was hidden after her death, preserved by those who believed the bloodline would return." He placed it gently on Elara's head, and she felt a surge of power, not just her own, but the accumulated magic of every Moon Seer who'd worn it before her. "Rise, Royal Seer," Kael said, and his smile was brilliant with pride and love. "Rise and take your place." The grove erupted in cheers, howls from the wolves, magical displays from the witches, even the stoic vampires inclining their heads in respect. Elara stood beside Kael, no longer hidden, no longer underestimated, no longer afraid. She had found where she belonged. The celebration that followed was joyous and chaotic. Tables laden with food appeared throughout the grove, music filled the air, and wolves danced with abandon. Elara found herself swept from one conversation to another, alphas seeking her counsel, witches wanting to discuss magical theory, young she-wolves looking at her with awe and hope. "You've become a symbol," Lissa observed, appearing at Elara's elbow with 2 glasses of wine. "Every she-wolf who's been told she's not enough, every wolf who's been underestimated, they see themselves in you." "That's terrifying," Elara admitted, accepting the wine gratefully. "That's leadership." Lysa clinked their glasses together. "Get used to it, Royal Seer." As the sun set and the celebration continued under moonlight and magical illumination, Kael found Elara again. "Dance with me," he asked, offering his hand. They moved to the center of the grove, and as they had at the autumn equinox gala, they danced. But this time there was no tension, no uncertainty, no fear. There was only joy and love, and the absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. "I have something for you," Kael said as the dance ended. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small velvet box. Elara's breath caught. "Kael, it's not what you think. Not yet." He opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple silver set with a moonstone that seemed to glow with inner light. "This is a promise ring, a promise that when we do mate, it will be because we both choose it freely, without politics or pressure or ancient laws. A promise that I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of you." Tears blurred Elara's vision as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "You already are worthy. You've always been. Then I'll spend every day proving I can keep making you happy." He kissed her, soft and sweet, and around them the crowd erupted in cheers again. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Elara found herself alone in a quiet corner of the grove. She needed a moment to process everything: the ceremony, the responsibility, the overwhelming love and support she'd received. Quite a change from the frightened girl in Moonstone Manor. Elara spun to find Elder Maeve approaching, her expression soft with affection. "Elder, just Maeve, child, you outrank me now." The old woman smiled. "Your mother would be so proud. Your grandmother, too." They both dreamed of a day when Moon Seers could walk freely again, when our gifts would be celebrated rather than feared. I wish they could have seen it. Oh, I think they can. Maeve looked up at the full moon overhead. The moon sees everything, remembers everything. They know Elara and they're proud. Maeve embraced her, and Elara felt the last piece of her old life settle into place. She'd been angry at Maeve for the suppression, for the years of hiding. But she understood now. It had been love, desperate and imperfect, but love nonetheless. "Thank you," Elara whispered, "for keeping me safe, for giving me the chance to become this." "You did that yourself, child. I just kept you alive long enough to bloom." Maeve pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Now go. Your Alpha King is waiting, and I suspect you two have much to discuss." Elara found Kael on the balcony of their quarters, staring out at the moonlit landscape. He turned as she approached, and the look in his eyes made her heart skip. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "Something I saw today, during the ceremony." "What?" "When Theron placed that circlet on your head, when all that ancestral power flowed into you, I felt it. Through our bond, through whatever connection we share. And Elara," he took her hands, "I saw a vision, not the future exactly, but a possibility. Us, years from now. Children with your eyes and my stubbornness, running through these halls. Peace across the territories, a realm where power is used to protect, rather than dominate." "That's a beautiful vision," Elara said softly. "It's our vision, if we choose it." Kael's voice was intense, urgent. "I know we agreed to wait, to make sure this was real and not just magical compulsion. But Elara, I've never been more certain of anything. You're my mate. Not because of ancient laws or political advantage or even magical recognition, because I choose you. Every day, every moment, I choose you." Elara felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "I choose you too. I think I have since the moment you offered me your arm in that grand hall and walked me out of my old life into this new one." "Then mate with me," Kael said, dropping to one knee. "Not as Alpha King to Royal Seer, but as Kael to Elara. Be my partner, my equal, my love. Help me build that future we both saw." "Yes," Elara breathed. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Kael rose and kissed her, and this time the bond between them flared to life. Not forced, not compelled, but chosen. Their powers intertwined, silver moonlight and alpha dominance creating something entirely new. The mating bond snapped into place, and Elara gasped at the intensity of it, feeling Kael's emotions as clearly as her own, his love and pride and fierce protectiveness washing over her in waves. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," she replied. "My alpha, my mate, my Kael." 3 months later, Elara stood in the council chamber, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. The pregnancy was early yet, barely confirmed, but already she could feel the life growing within her, strong and bright, carrying both Moon Seer magic and alpha power. She was presenting her latest vision to the council, a proposal for a supernatural academy, where young wolves, witches, fae, and other creatures could learn together, breaking down the barriers that had divided their kinds for centuries. "It's ambitious," one elder said cautiously, "perhaps too ambitious." "Everything worth doing is ambitious," Elara countered. 2 years ago, you would have said a Moon Seer serving openly was too ambitious. A year ago, you would have said peace between covens and pacts was too ambitious. Yet here we are. Kael, seated on his throne with Elara standing beside him as equal rather than subordinate, smiled with pride. "The Royal Seer's proposal has my full support. Let's put it to a vote." The proposal passed, though not unanimously. Change never came without resistance, but it came nonetheless, steady and inevitable as the turning seasons. That night, lying in Kael's arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, Elara reflected on how far she'd come. From the dormant wolf in a gilded cage to Royal Seer and Alpha Queen. From believing she was worthless to knowing her own power. From thinking she'd never be loved to being cherished beyond measure. "What are you thinking?" Kael asked, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her back. "That I'm happy," Elara said simply. "Truly, completely happy. And that's something I never thought I'd be able to say." "Get used to it," Kael murmured, pulling her closer, "because I intend to spend the rest of our very long lives making sure you stay that way." Outside, the moon shone bright and full, blessing the Moon Seer and her Alpha King, their unborn child, and the realm they would build together, a realm where the hidden could emerge, where the underestimated could rise, where anyone could bloom exactly where they were planted. And in the shadows of Shadowclaw territory, Roric received word of Elara's pregnancy and felt his last hope of revenge crumble to dust. The Moon Seer had won. Completely, utterly, finally. He would fade into obscurity, his name forgotten, while hers would be written in history. Some endings, he realized bitterly, were exactly what you deserved. 20 years later, a young she-wolf stood in the courtyard of the Crescent Court, her silver eyes so like her mother's, watching as new students arrived for the Supernatural Academy's 20th year. She wore the pendant of a Moon Seer in training, her power still developing but already strong. "Nervous, little Moon?" a voice asked. She turned to find her father, the Alpha King, though age had only made him more distinguished rather than diminished. "A little. What if I'm not as strong as Mother?" Kael smiled, the same smile that had won her mother's heart decades ago. "Your mother spent years believing she was nothing. Then she became everything. You already know you're powerful, Arya. The question isn't whether you're strong enough, it's what you'll choose to do with that strength. I want to help people, like she does. Then you will." He ruffled her dark hair affectionately. "Now go. Your mother's waiting to begin the opening ceremony, and you know how she gets when people are late." Arya laughed and ran off, her power already making the air shimmer with possibility. Kael watched her go, then felt familiar arms wrap around him from behind. "Our daughter is going to change the world," Elara murmured. "She learned from the best," Kael replied, turning to kiss his mate, "just like her mother did." And together they walked toward the ceremony, toward the future they'd built, toward the realm where the hidden could shine and the underestimated could rise, toward home. KTA Final. Thank you for joining Elara and Kael on their journey from humiliation to triumph, from hidden to celebrated, from caged to free. If you enjoyed this tale of paranormal romance, transformation, and the power of choosing your own destiny, please subscribe for more stories of supernatural love and magical adventure. What did you think of Elara's transformation? Have you ever felt underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're listening from somewhere in the world right now, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. This story has traveled far, just like our Moon Seer, and I'm curious where it's found you. Until next time, remember, you are never just what others see. You are what you choose to become.